Hi, I'm Firas, and welcome back to BrandBucket Academy. In this episode, we're diving into one of the most creative and sometimes overwhelming parts of starting a business, coming up with the perfect name. Margot Bushnaq, founder and CEO of BrandBucket, walks us through how to brainstorm effectively, evaluate name options, and make confident decisions that align with your brand vision. If you're stuck on finding that perfect name or just don't know where to start, this conversation will give you the tools and mindset you need to make it happen. Let's jump in. Hello again. How are you doing today?
I'm great today. How are
Awesome.
you?
Very good. Very good. Eager to ask a lot of questions.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. Okay. So we're talking about how to come up with a business name. The first stage, starting the naming process. Point zero. What's the first thing someone should do when beginning to name their business?
You need to do some deep meditation on the problem that you're solving. You need to come up with your why right off the bat. So most people, they know exactly, they know the space they're going to go into, they know what they're going to sell, they know kind of the problem they're going to solve. But if there are other competitors out there that are already doing what you do and solving the same problem, why do your customers need you? What are you bringing to the table that's different and better?
Coolio. I like it. How important is it to understand your target audience before naming your company?
Very important, because names have personalities, and the personality is a reflection of the customer and a reflection of the people in the company, the people behind the brand. Customers want to buy from people like them, or they want to buy from maybe people better than them. So if they're a newbie in the financial space, they want to purchase a product or use a product from someone who sounds like they've been around for a couple hundred years. And so you need to understand not only who your audience is, but who your audience sees you as.
Excellent. Should people brainstorm alone, or is collaboration helpful in the early stages?
It's very, very hard to brainstorm alone. Really, one brain just isn't going to give you the many various options and creativity that you need. I would say you can have several people brainstorm alone, but you're really going to get juicy material when you're all together and the energy is feeding off each other.
Juicy.
Juicy.
Juicy. I like it. Brainstorming. What are your favorite methods or exercises for brainstorming name ideas?
Most people, I think, see brainstorming as a blank slate. Like you walk up to a dry erase board with a marker and you just start writing down words that mean something to your business. It's really difficult to do that. I like to suggest that you give yourself different silos to fill. So you can, and it helps because especially when you start going down and you get hyper-focused and you start going down a rabbit hole of one particular word and you open up a thesaurus and you start looking at synonyms of that word, sometimes you really lose sight of other important factors like your audience or your vibe, like what kind of emotions are you trying to evoke in people. So if you right off the bat say that I'm going to kind of look, today we're going to sit down and we're going to try to find invented words that mean something to us and descriptive words and maybe evocative words, and we're going to shift our mind from one to the other and just really open up the creativity. And so invented words are extremely hard because it's a word that means nothing. And it's easy to go actually to a list somewhere like BrandBucket and just filter by invented, tell yourself that you're kind of seeking anywhere between 1 and 3 syllables and just start looking. You're going to have to go a while. There's a lot of options out there and you're going to have to go pages and pages. But every so often you're going to hit one that you're like, you know what? I like that. And just write it down. And just do that over and over and over. And eventually you'll kind of see a commonality between all the names that you've written down. You're like, okay, these are all kind of giving the feeling of speed. Okay, so maybe we didn't really realize that speed is a critical component of our business.
Mm-hmm.
And then that helps you then go into the other types of names. Okay, maybe you didn't even think to start, looking for synonyms of speed, quick, fast, all this. Maybe right off the bat, you're focused on what you do and you were thinking about, okay, we sell tickets and everything was ticket based. But if you're focused on speed, now you have a whole other range of options to go through when you start brainstorming other areas.
Very cool. How can people keep their brainstorming focused? I know this is a problem I have. I'm all over the place. But how can you stay focused without limiting creativity?
My favorite tool is to kind of put, like if you consider it like a diagram with your company at the center. And then every idea that comes out, there's no bad ideas. Any idea that someone has, you can kind of decide how far it is from the kind of core idea that you're brainstorming today. So if you're brainstorming and your current session is focusing on this particular problem we're solving, the why of our business, like we are trying to figure out, so we've decided speed is a crucial component to what makes us better than our competitors. Someone throws out a word that's sort of reminiscent of speed, but not quite. You can put it on your little whiteboard. You can put it really far out with a long line going to it. Someone else comes up with a word that's close to it. You can put it a little closer. And so constantly having your focus in the center, but allowing yourself to get far from it.
Mm-hmm.
It just keeps you engaged, keeps you from getting bored, it keeps you from getting into fights with people. There's no bad ideas. You can't discount someone's ideas. It can just maybe be way out in left field.
So you're taking a visual analysis to how close this brainstorm is moving away from the core of what you should be.
Yeah. You're allowing yourself to move, but you're actually reminding yourself that you are really far out there.
I like it. What role does exploring keywords, metaphors, or themes play in name generation?
It's really important because the whole goal that I think everyone should try to reach at the end of a brainstorming session, or at least at the end of the brainstorming cycle, which could be many, many sessions, is you want to have lots and lots of options. You're not trying to get to the perfect name in your brainstorming session. That's not what brainstorming is. Brainstorming is getting a big, healthy pile of options.
The bucket.
A bucket of options that are all pretty good. And then you start to look at them, then you put on a different set of filters over your eyes. And you can say, these are all great company names. Now, which ones can we build a story around? Which ones are more relevant to the problem that we're solving than others? And most of the time when people think, of the perfect name, or they look at a competitor and they're like, oh man, those guys really named it with their name. That name maybe wasn't even one of their first options. They were just really good at identifying it was the one they could build the best story around. And only when they introduced it to the customers did it sound perfect.
Sounds good. Awesome. Next, we're going to be talking about iteration and feedback. How many name ideas should someone come up with before narrowing it down? Basically, you talked about this whole idea of brainstorming.
Mm-hmm.
When do you feel like, okay, enough with brainstorming and adding to the bucket, and then at what point do I start removing names from the bucket to narrow down my options?
I think a good rule of thumb is 150 to 200 options. It sounds like a lot, but everything that kind of makes that short list, and that's a short list. Like a long list is 1,000 options. A short list, 150 options. Everything made it there for a reason. Everything kind of struck some kind of chord. And only after you've taken a step back, you've meditated on the whole reason for your business and put on your new set of glasses. Okay, now we're going to look at which ones we can actually sell. Which name can we build a story around? That's 150 can quickly become 15. And then 15 is a really good number of, these are 15 really, really good options. We'd technically be happy with any of them, but let's just go with our gut on the one that we can get today, the one that we can start moving forward with, put this whole naming phase behind us, and just get on board with that name.
What kind of feedback is most helpful during the naming process? Basically, in your sifting through your options.
The kind of feedback from friends, or the kind of feedback from the
feedback
people
who are involved in that brainstorming or in the filtering process of the names?
The original brainstorming process, there shouldn't be a lot of feedback. Someone may be giving options that sound totally out there, according to the founder or the person who's the key decision maker. But there's a reason that you have this person at the table. And even if their ideas are totally out there, you've got to write them down, because that could be a representation of a future customer that you maybe haven't considered. Every idea is a good idea.
So you discourage the feedback in the brainstorm session.
Exactly.
But once you enter into the filtration process where you are narrowing the options down, this is the point where you start encouraging feedback about the options.
Before you actually get to feedback, the very first thing you should do, so when you're brainstorming, you have a general idea of your competitive landscape, who you're competing with, who the people are out there. But most likely at that point, people haven't done a really, really deep dive. They've thought about the big guys, but they haven't thought about, smaller companies at their stage or maybe a couple of years ahead of them. So when you have your 150 to 200 options, the very first thing you need to do, there's a very high chance that other people in your industry have the same idea as you. And you need to immediately go get rid of anything that could cause confusion, could cause trademark issues, that is just too close and not a differentiator between you and that other person. And so that's the first feedback, is have everyone just go do their own due diligence and come back and say, I found this guy and these people, it's too close. You've narrowed down some. But then feedback after that should be really looked at through the eyes of a customer. Everyone needs to put their customer hat on and just say, okay, if this were me and you were presenting this name to me, does it make sense?
Yep. This next question is actually something that I tend to be very interested in identifying ways to constantly improve. It basically asking, how can someone tell if they're reacting emotionally to a name? And keeping in mind that this could be the positive reaction that we've discussed before, but it also could be the negative reaction that that could potentially be like, hey, I don't like this,
Mm-hmm.
and how can you, as somebody who is part of the feedback loop, be more self-aware and about your emotional attachment or detachment to certain names?
I think emotion, whether positive or negative, as far as whether you're reacting, you really like it or you dislike it, emotion is a good thing. And you can actually track when you're going through the narrowing down, you can track how much emotion is in each name. With different colors or different something, or you sort them in different ways, because sometimes something that really triggers you even negatively, it's any emotional response for a customer is a good response. It's creating an attachment. So going back to a name like Slack, I could just picture the brainstorming war room for that naming. There were probably lots of people against that name. They're like, that name has a negative connotation. Like nobody wants slackers on their team. Nobody wants people who slack off. But that emotion it allowed them to take that word and flip it on its head and make something super memorable.
Interesting. Yeah, I get it.
So a name with no emotional attachment whatsoever really kind of should be at the bottom of your list. It's bland. Nobody wants bland. Everyone wants spicy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like what you're saying as far as that, even if it has a potentially negative emotion, can you actually turn that into a positive by being the anti-X, or being the or being able to take that language or that word or that brand and be able to kind of make that emotion be more positive than a potential negative. So I like that a lot.
The brand name Amazon, to me, it sounds deep and murky and full of piranhas and and kind of just like almost too vast. But the fact that it evokes that emotion from me in someone else could actually, be the same emotion, that it's deep and murky and vast, but for a good reason, that you want a store that sells everything.
Yeah.
Like it's so wide. It's the biggest river. It's the longest river in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Filtering for fit. What criteria should people use to evaluate and filter down their list of names?
You really need to look at it from the eyes of your customer. And in a way, when you're filtering, other than crossing off something for the fact that it's a trademark issue or too close to one of your competitors, again, you're going back to there's no bad option. It's just how far it is from your core customer base or from the messaging that you're trying to portray.
Yeah.
And so something maybe is a fit, it's just really far away. Going back to the diagram of how far is something from your core fit, it's just really far. And eventually you're going to narrow down most likely to the options that are closer to your fit. But you never know. Maybe something that is way out there on a limb, you sleep on it and you wake up the next morning and it's the first name that you remember from your session the night before. Like there's something about that one that stuck with you.
Yeah. When does a name cross the line from creative to confusing?
That doesn't really happen with invented names. Invented names can't really be confusing because they're empty vessels. So you'd be looking at a keyword that just really doesn't make sense. for your brand. You can't build a story behind it. And if you have a word that you love, or like Elon Musk and his attachment to X, and he would name everything X if he could, because X means nothing and it means everything at the same time. But if you're constantly trying to shove a story onto a name just because of an attachment to it, then you've crossed the line into confusing. If you're having to explain and explain and explain and make taglines for why your company is named this, you're losing at that point.
When you're explaining, you're losing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How should someone balance creativity, clarity, and strategy when finalizing their name?
Creativity is the most important factor. Again, you want to stand out from your competitors, and your name should give a strong indication of who you are and why you're different. Strategy is your plan for presenting your name to your customers. It's the story behind it and the reason for the name. And clarity is the mix of the two. If you can't, creative kind of means it's out there. Your story is bringing it into reason. And if the path between the name and the reason is too long, if you can't explain it in 30 seconds, it's not clear.
Yeah, makes sense. Naming with confidence. What's one mistake you see people make when trying to come up with names?
I think they went too far down the rabbit hole of brainstorming, and the end result of the name is so far from their original purpose that they can no longer explain the link back to the original purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it only makes sense to that one person because only they traveled down that hole. And I think the second mistake is focusing too much on the domain name being unregistered. Everyone is insistent, not everyone, but a lot of people are insistent on paying the minimum for their name. They're paying the minimum for the thing that's going to be the face of their brand. So they want to pay $12 and get something that no one else has thought of before, for the sake of just because they're too stubborn to maybe go after something that's slightly more expensive, but actually makes more sense to their business.
Yeah. Yeah, focusing on the availability of the name ends up hindering the creativity of actually coming up with your true essence and what you're trying to become. And that could potentially be a detrimental factor in your brand or what you're building for a few thousand or whatever the value that you put on the name that you were purchasing in the aftermarket. So yeah, that makes sense.
And it could be that they're confusing the fact that no one has registered the name before with the fact that no one has thought of that name before. They're confusing uniqueness with availability. When there's billions of people in this world, every idea has been somebody else's idea before. And if you're focusing so hard on having an original idea, then maybe it's not that great of an idea. You kind of want something that somebody has had an idea, like it has thought of before, because that means that you have at least one customer out there.
Yeah.
And so if you can just find a list like BrandBucket of ideas that other creative people have had that they're not using, and they're just saying, here, I did the hard work for you, I did the brainstorming for you, I'm putting it out there to save you time.
Yeah.
Then you're at least on the same page as with one other person.
Yeah. Well, it's not just one other person, it's another person that actually thought of maybe of a similar business and a target audience and validated enough that they actually went through it or attempted it. And you're building on potentially, a concept, and you're giving it your own DNA, if you will.
Yep.
What's your advice to someone who feels stuck or overwhelmed by the naming process? And I know you mentioned meditation at some point in the past, but beyond meditation, like what can you give as an advice to somebody who is just feeling like just I can't get started, the writer's block, if you will, in starting the brainstorming process?
That's the exact reason that we built BrandBucket. Is starting from a blank slate and brainstorming is incredibly difficult. What's so much easier is looking at a list and just saying yes or no. And even if you go through 100,000 names and you have 5 yeses out of that, in a sense, for a lot of people, including myself, it was easier than having to think of those 5 things. Like the time it would have taken for me to generate those things that actually clicked with me was probably weeks compared to just a day or two of looking and digging and sifting and just waiting for something that resonates.
Yeah. And I liked the advice that you gave previously about identifying the feelings, the emotions, the essence of what you want to become, and doing searches on those. That ultimately would be a good way to kind of start the flow of ideas coming in.
Yeah, you meditate on your why. Your brainstorming is more of just creating a list of words that work. But then you go searching for actual names that either evoke that word, are related to that word, contain that word, or a misspelling of that word.
Perfect. What's the most important thing to remember when choosing a name you'll build a brand around?
Your story. You have to, again, going back to your why of what problem you're solving and how are you solving it in a different way than everyone else. If your name comes packaged with a nice story of why you picked that name, then your brand is pretty much everything else. It's the marketing, it's the visualization, it's the feeling, the vibe, the history of everything, your interaction with your customers. If the name kind of evokes, your product in a very simplistic way and it doesn't actually describe what you do, it describes why you do it, your brand is going to be much easier to grow.
Your business name is the starting point of your entire brand story. Don't let it hold you back. Head over to brandbucket.com to explore a curated marketplace of brandable business names designed to spark ideas and give your next venture the name it deserves. Stop brainstorming from a blank page. Let BrandBucket help you discover a name that's meaningful, memorable, and market ready. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.